Welcome to Éxito in Minutes. I'm here with
Alex Espinosa,
my co-host, and I'm Troy Blanchard. Thanks for joining us today. We're super excited. Éxito in Minutes is all focused about how in minutes we can learn the best practices, valuable tips to help you achieve your full potential. We're inviting experts to come in, and they're going to share inspirational stories. Our main purpose is when you're concluding listening to these podcasts that you will be a better person and take some of those best practices, learn not just from us, but from our guests. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to Éxito in Minutes. I'm here with my co-host,
Alex Espinosa.
And I'm Troy Blanchard, and we are excited about this topic today, so thanks for joining us. So we want to talk about decisions, right? And decisions are amazing because it's the one thing that we do every single day, and studies suggest that we do 35,000 decisions are made a day. Now, naturally, there's a high percentage of those, right, that aren't conscious, right?
Yeah, most of them,
right? Most of them. But even if you were to say 5%, right, it doesn't really matter. There's just...
You know what? It is smaller than that.
What is
Actually, it is 99.74% of the decisions that we make that are unconscious. Okay. So imagine that.
So if there's just a few percentage of those 35,000 decisions, and even if you're talking 1%, you're still in the hundreds of decisions a day, right? And so our question to you, to our audience, and what we started to question, I guess not necessarily to the audience, the question to each other were, okay, what is the best practices of decision making? And we came up with 3 different categories of areas we want to talk about today, right? And I just got to read this little part here that's super important. It's a segue into the beginning of where we're going. The majority of the decisions that the majority of the decisions are made intuitively, relying on gut feelings rather than logical reasoning. Ooh, that's a worry, right? That's a worry. So how can we make informed decisions and act on those decisions so that we have a good outcome, what we would call a successful outcome, right? So let's go into the first category. All right. The first category is what I'm thinking, Alex. I'm talking a lot already. But you talk more in Spanish, okay? I'll talk less, I promise. But the very first category we want to go into is, okay, how is it? Let's just say I believe the majority of our audience probably believes in God. And if you don't believe in God, then you believe probably in wisdom. And you probably think of the universe or a gut reaction or a feeling, whatever that might be for the definition of this podcast. Those thoughts and feelings come to us every day. On a spiritual nature, there's a concept of the first thought that's a good thought that comes to you, you should act on. The second thought is typically the thought of, I'll give you an example. I should text my friend. I wonder how she's doing or he's doing, and tell them that God loves them, or tell them that I'm thinking of them. The second thought is, I haven't texted them for like 6 months. That would be weird, right? Or it's too late at night, or it's too early in the morning. It's the self-defeating, right? Or the intrusive thoughts that come in that distance us from making that decision. And then indecision breeds decision, right? So soon the decision's been made for you because you decided not to do it. So that is the first area. Generally, if you can react within, the studies suggest around 5 seconds, right? Make a decision, and you are feeling something, whether from wisdom, inspiration, or if you're feeling that you should do something and then you don't do it in the first 5 minutes, you generally won't do it. So you wake up, the alarm goes off. If you don't hit snooze in the first 5 seconds, you're out of bed, right? I better said, you'll get out of bed if you do it in the first 5 seconds. Otherwise, you're hitting snooze, right? What's another example of that? Can you think of another example, Alex?
Well, I'm thinking about always when you think about the first decision that you want to make, the first thought, the first inspiration, the intuition, or whatever it is, it comes to your mind. I was thinking exactly what you say in the morning. Let's say when you want to start doing exercises and you want to go to the gym. So you decided to wake up. Now you have the second decision to make. Am I going to the gym or not? So you have those 5 seconds to say, if you're going to do it, you just do it.
Yes.
If not, you
won't do it because your daughter's going to walk in that room and ask you a question. And then you're like, I'm going to dive into this question. And then all of a sudden, subconsciously, you're building excuses why not to go. But if you wake up and your workout clothes are next to your bed and you do it in the first 5 seconds. So I'm not gonna. I would say, I'm calculating my words that I shouldn't, because that's my second thought. I believe in inspiration, and I believe we receive inspiration, and I believe we can seek after it like a muscle and exercise how to receive more inspiration. And many of those good inspirations that come, the more that you react to them and that you say, yes, I'm going to go do that. One of my biggest regrets from something that popped into my head, which I call inspiration, was I should text a really dear friend of mine since college. I had not texted her for, 6 months. And I felt like I should text her, tell her that God loves her and I'm thinking about her. I love her. I hope she's doing well. And then the next thought, no, I haven't texted her for 6 months. I'm in a hurry. I'll do it later tonight. I'll do it tomorrow. My wife talks to her a month later, and she went through a bout of cancer and found out that day was one of her lowest days, her most depressing days. She was most depressed that day. So I go back to, as that's one of my regrets. Even if she just knew a friend was thinking of her, right? I love those messages. I've been the benefactor of those, where I'm like low and I'm kind of down. All of a sudden I get a text out of nowhere where a friend reaches out to me and says, hey, I'm thinking about you. I care about you. Are you good? So there's the first one, is don't talk yourself out of it. If it's a good thought, wisdom, inspiration, do it, right? That's what I would suggest. Okay, we should do a podcast separate on that later. Maybe that's more around a spiritual aspect, but we're going to keep it a little bit neutral. But that is a core belief. Okay, let's go to the second category of decisions. When you get to decision making, everybody has different tools. When I was little, my mom was like, take a piece of paper, put pros and cons. And I'm like, Mom, I really want to go camping with the Boy Scouts this weekend. And my mom is like, okay, but it's also Travis's birthday party. Like, ooh, I really want to go to Travis's birthday party. So she's like, write it down. So I'd go, okay, pros and cons to going camping, pros and cons to going to Travis's birthday party. And in the end, I was like, okay, I'm going camping, right? Because it was more pros. That is just a very simple tool. But there's so many tools out there. Well, let me ask you, is there a specific tool that you use or that your wife uses when coming to decisions?
Well, in my case, the tool I use is to ask my wife.
The go-to.
The go-to.
Ask wife tool.
That's my first tool, and then I'll decide to do more things. It's like what I do love to do is like, and we need to be very careful about it, is I love to ask other people about the processes, their opinions. I like to try to gather the more data I can before I make a decisions, because there are some times that I cannot see the whole perspective of my decision. So when other comes, have you ever considered this, or have you ever thought about this? I was like, oh no, I didn't. So I start having a new perspective of my decision. So that's my process.
I
First,
love it.
Is my wife.
So your tool is
Then
ask a loved one.
Yeah.
Someone that you care and trust. You said something important. I want you to expand on it. You said you have to be careful when doing that. What do you mean by that?
Well, you know what? There are some times that people will start counseling you, first of all, based on their experience, on their own perspective, and probably is not the right tool to do it. Let's say something like this.
The right person.
The right person. When I got married, like 14 years ago, probably if my wife, she's listened to this, she'll kill me.
Yeah. She's like, it was 13.
13. Yeah, you should know that. But she knows that I always. So we had these great, amazing people around us that they were like, when are you going to have your first kid? You should have kids. And when is that going to happen? And we've been during this process because my wife, she couldn't get pregnant, and we didn't know why. We've been trying for almost 10 years to have our first kid, and we couldn't. And it hurt so bad when everybody's, when are you going to have kids? You should do this. And this is like, okay, I'm not asking you a counsel about this. So the thing is that maybe the people don't have the right perspective of what's going on. So you need to make sure that you go to the right person that have the experience or knowledge or the ability to guide you where you want to be. Like when you're trying to find a mentor or someone who guides you, it should be someone who already accomplished what you're trying to accomplish.
Ooh, yeah,
so
I love that.
It's about decision making. It's like, who is going to be the wise person? Probably it's going to be your parents, because they are old, but they also have a lot of knowledge.
Did you say your parents are okay?
Well, I'm talking about mine.
Mine are young, but keep going. All right.
But And sometimes we're trying to get to a niche or to reach to a person that they don't know anything about what you're trying to decide. So probably you will receive a counsel that is not right.
So go to a loved one, right? I love that you're advocating. Go to somebody you trust. But also, Alex brings up a certain point. When you're asking advice about a decision you're going to make, go to a loved one that he said has experience, especially if they've already accomplished it. I love that perspective. They've already accomplished it, so that's a good person to go to. But also that's trusted, right? So somebody that's experienced and trusted.
Yeah.
Any other characteristics I missed there? Experience, trusted,
knowledge,
and that has the knowledge. Okay, so there we go. So there's a great tool. Go to a loved one. And as he cautions, be careful because you might ask the wrong person, right? So, and involuntary advice, take it with a grain of salt. Okay. Yeah. There's a tool. If you guys go on, I'll give you an example. If you go right now onto Google or ChatGPT and say decision matrix, you're going to have a whole list that comes up. There is so many different amazing tools. And I've said this before in the future, and I'm going to say it again. What's the best tool to use? The one you use, right? So everybody will say, hey, I've been using these 3 different type of project management tools. Which one's the best? Which one are you going to use? So it's the same way with decision matrix. For me, a decision matrix that I used a lot would be the decision tree when it came into strategy, right? And so there was a lot of scenarios, and I think I brought this up before. There was a lot of scenarios where I would have an owner come into town. I was generally running a company that was out of the country, and an owner would come into town. And when that owner would come into town, I would think through, okay, what's he going to see first? What would his comment be? If he sees the parking lot first, his comment will be this, and what do I need to prepare for that? If he sees the car parking lot first, what will his comment be on that? Oh, there's not enough car spaces. Why isn't there enough parking spaces, right? And then I would play out in a decision tree all the way down until I was totally prepared. Every branch of that tree would have a file attached to it. So in my situation, I would go into town sometimes on executive meetings. And when I would get there, I would have always my backpack. It would be full of any possible thing you might ask. I would prepare 8 hours, almost probably more than that, before I do every single monthly and quarterly meeting. That way, if he ever said, okay, hey, what's the throughput at X facility? I'd be like, that's a great question. Here is the tendency. Here is the trend. And I would hand everybody in the room a piece of paper. I had no idea. Sometimes I would go in there with 10 subjects, paper clipped with 10 copies, 100 sheets of paper, and I wouldn't give out one. And sometimes I'd give out 80 of the 100.
Wow.
But how could you, that's like being prepared. That's a decision matrix. And I think it's very useful in some applications. I wanted to bring up one other that my wife uses, and I love this. She is a researcher. She will ponder it. She will research it. She'll ask just like you do. She'll ask a trusted person that she thinks that would give advice on that. And then after she does tons of research and pondering it, she turns to a higher power, right? And so that's her process. Go take some time and explore what is the best tool for you in decision making.
And you know what? It is important to understand that every person learns in a different way. So my learning process will be so different than yours. So while you were talking, I was thinking, yeah, that's right. Because my process is about thinking in my mind. Probably to someone else is to write down the information so they can actually see. Others just like to listen. Others need to feel. Anyway, everyone has a different learning process. So make sure that you put the process of making decisions to the best way you learn things, and not because it is working for my best friend, that process, it will work for me. It's not that way. Think about yourself, think about how do you learn things, and do it, and find the best tool according to yourself. That's it.
That's perfect. So there's the first 2 examples. Find some tools, lean into trusted individuals. And then the third one I want to go into, which is not necessarily, this is the third section, not the third tool. We're going to move away from tools. I just want to talk about a concept. And it's been said, the priority triangle. What's another way to say the priority triangle? Do you remember? It's the quality,
speed, and
quality, cost, and speed. Okay. So if you've heard of this triangle, you can Google it as well. If you look, you could do they interchange in English, so they'll usually always use quality. They'll do cost or priced, or they'll do speed or time. It's basically the same thing. But what it advocates is that you could have two of the three. So we'll give you a couple quick examples. Alex, if you're with your family and you're going out to eat, how does the quality, cost, speed triangle work for you?
Oh, that is a great question. I think always, most of the time, I think about the time. So I'm thinking about I need to be on a meeting, or probably I need to I don't know, to take my daughter to school or something like that. So the first thing that I think is, how much time do I have? So let's think about high fast food.
Fast food.
Fast food.
Fast food.
So the thing is that
That's a good one.
if you want to think about that, is like, it's going to be cheap.
Yep.
It won't take time, but you're sacrificing quality.
Yeah, which is good sometimes. Like if you're on your way to school and you're gonna hit, McDonald's or something for breakfast.
Something like that. It's
Right?
like, and we're not saying that sacrificing those things is like, you need to relate that as a bad quality. It's a different quality.
Yeah, you're not gonna have eggs Benedict with poached hollandaise sauce on top, or it's
yeah.
gonna be fast and an egg McMuffin. Let's roll. Right?
Yeah, it will take you more time. It will be expensive, but the quality is going to be higher. So it's the decision based on what you need.
Yes, for that situation. So think about that. I think a lot of times I recently had a really cool experience. My daughter got married. I was super excited.
Congratulations.
There we go. That's what it's for.
I saw the picture. I don't know if this is going to be in the podcast or not, but our audience, it was one of the most beautiful moments. It's like when for those that are parents, and many of you probably your kids are already married, some of yours not. In my case, it's like I was thinking about how it's gonna be on that time. It was beautiful. It was amazing. It was like I saw like a dream. It was so beautiful. Congratulations.
Thank you. I was so excited.
So
and there is so many tender and special moments, right?
Yeah.
It's such a mile marker in a life. It's like a milestone, right?
Yeah.
But I was shocked at how the triangle applied. If we wanted a specific wedding dress, and if it's gonna be, when I mean specific, custom, then it's going to take time, and it's not going to be cheap. So there's an example. So a question you would ask in the triangle is, which one are you willing to sacrifice?
Yeah.
So the priority triangle, I'm willing to sacrifice cost. I'll pay more for having quality, right, and speed, but I know it's going to cost more. Yeah. But if you take the examples, you can have, so I love how these break down, and we'll put this in the show notes. So if it's inexpensive and fast, you're going to have low quality. That's like the food example that he just gave us. If it's great quality and inexpensive, it's going to be slow, right? And if it's fast and good, it's going to be expensive.
Yeah.
So if you want a custom made dress and you want to buy tomorrow, guess what? It's not going to be cheap. And that was what was interesting. It's almost like that in every decision that had to be made when it came to a reception, right? Or the food that night. I wanted it to be maybe less expensive, but I needed to be there at a specific time. And so just take that triangle in your life and see how that applies. Go ahead and Google search it. If you have been to the United States, the example that they gave as quality and speed is you can go walk up into Harley Davidson, get your motorcycle right away. It's going to be not only a dual purpose of speed. It's going to be fast. It's going to be quality, but it's going to be pricey, right? If you're going to get a haircut and you want it super fast and you're going to sacrifice price, it's going to be like a supercut. So if you want a hotel, it's the same way. It's going to be like a Motel 6, right? And then let's say you're a golfer. My dad's a huge golfer, so I got to use a golfer example. If you want a custom golf clubs and you're going to go to TaylorMade, it's going to be expensive, it's going to be quality, but it's not going to show up on your door tomorrow, right? So this applies in so many areas. It's a great thing. It applies from production all the way to decisions that you make as a family. I hope some of these best qualities, best practices. I hope some of these best practices apply in your life. And I hope this podcast has been able to help you. Any last comments before we sign off?
Now, the thing is, like, remember, this is a basic economic principle. Is that the way you say it? Principio básico de economía.
Yeah.
Our necessities are unlimited, but our resources, they have a limit.
They have a limit, yeah.
So when you think about it, it's like, no, I don't need to sacrifice any of those. I want to have quality, I want to have speed, and I want to have time. It's like, probably is not going to be possible. There are probably small times or that probably might happen, probably, but you need to think about that. It's like you as a consumer probably want to, okay, I want to have this done by yesterday, and I want to be cheaper, and I want to have the best quality out of it. That won't happen. So think about that and make wise decisions based on that.
Yep. And it all boils down to which of those are you willing to sacrifice of those three. Thanks for joining us on Best Decision on our podcast, Éxito en Minutes, about making the best possible decisions. As we talked about at the very beginning, there's 35,000 decisions that you make a day. For the ones that you're consciously making, utilize a best practice. And if you find any other best practices that you want to add to this show, throw it down in the comments. So subscribe below. There should be a click. If you're on YouTube, click subscribe. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, those two you can subscribe to. So we ask you to subscribe for each of our podcasts. All right. Thank you for joining. Have a fantastic day.
Bye-bye.